Welcome to the Over the Hump Podcast, your gateway to the world of the iconic Brahman breed of cattle. At BRC Ranch, our passion for Brahman cattle runs deep. Join us as we delve into the heart of this extraordinary breed, unveiling its rich history, exploring industry trends, and sharing captivating stories that define the American Brahman. BRC Ranch stands as the pinnacle of Brahman excellence in America, boasting a decade-long legacy of champions and housing the finest Brahman bulls worldwide. It's not just about cattle, it's about a legacy that reverberates across ranches and hearts. Brought to you by BRC Ranch, where the Brahman legacy thrives and stories are woven into the very fabric of ranching. This is Over the Hump. And now your hosts, Brendan Cutrer, Rachel Cutrer, and Keaton Dodd.
Hey guys, welcome to the next episode of Over the Hump Podcast. And today is basically like you're listening in to a private conversation between me and one of my best friends, Stuart Watkins. And we are just sitting down, rehashing the World Brahman Congress, talking about the show, talking about some different ideas, and just all the positivity that we're seeing right now in the Brahman breed. So hope you sit back and enjoy this episode of Over the Hump. Hey everyone, welcome back to Over the Hump Podcast, and today I have with me one of my best friends, Stuart Watkins, and we are going to, welcome Stuart.
Thank you, Rachel, for having me on, and we've had such a fun few days experience kind of the World Brahman Congress, and it's just fun to kind of catch up and have a little bit of a recap about it.
I know. So usually after every show, Stuart and I and others, we have like a debrief, and we have not actually gotten to do that for the World Brahman Congress, but here it is. So this is a complete raw and unfiltered and just authentic conversation. We just wanted to get on here and kind of rehash the show and the events.
For starters, congratulations to y'all's team on just an exceptional day in the Gray Show. And it's fun to be able to follow a lot of y'all's genetic lines from, when they're, just calves to seeing them mature and then seeing them as adults coming back. I mean, I think everyone has really enjoyed Margaret's trajectory since she was such a young female. And I just thought she just really looked so captivating and just a great representation of the American Brahman.
Well, thank you. I was thinking about that last night. Actually, the very first show we showed Margaret was, the Washington County Fair, and Kylie Patterson used her Reserve Grand Champion at her very first show. I mean, she was Greenbroke.
Oh, I remember that.
And then she went to the Nationals that fall with Mitch Thomas as the judge and won calf champion there. And, of course, the next year Nationals was champion in 2023 and then All-American. And she is just a joy to show. And then, of course, I've been a fan of your heifer since the very first time I saw her.
Well, for me and Dad, we made some hard decisions after Houston last year. We bought a really big show string to Houston, and then we're just kind of ready to kind of scale back and be a little bit more efficient. And, we sent two individuals to the World Brahman Congress. And I think that the female that ended up being Reserve Grand is a female that I cherish, not just because of her pedigree, but from a red Brahman breed character standpoint. I think she just really hits the spot. And so to see that being rewarded as a breeder, it was really such an achievement for us. And
when I was looking out, I was in the stands watching that champion drive, and the champion female to me looked very beautiful. And I thought really she looked a lot like Margaret in terms they matched up very well. And then your female was just phenomenal. I mean, those were both two females that looked just exceptional out there.
Oh, thank you. And I was actually thinking about this morning. Some animals that come to mind for me when watching the World Brahman Congress were Margaret, the bull that was grand champion for J.D. Hudgens, and then the grand champion red female. I just really felt very strongly that any cattleman would have picked those three animals to run away with, for that show. And it was just their time And so I really love and admire the cow that beat us in the final drive. And I think that's part of being a good breeder is when, someone edges out just a bit ahead of you. You know what I mean? You have that appreciation for that animal. And so I'm such a big fan of the grand champion red female. I thought she was incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, where do we start? I will say I did not arrive on the scene of the World Brahman Congress until Thursday night, which the first thing we picked the girls up out of school on Thursday, and then we went straight to the ST event. And I got to say that event was fabulous. It was wonderful.
It was incredible. I think some of my highlights that I have written down from that weekend are kind of that, Thursday to Sunday would be the ST event, no doubt. That the speakers that they had there were spot on. I think Juan Moreno is kind of like the Elon Musk of our time in the cattle business. And to see what he has built, through ST genetics, and then pairing that with people like Adeline and Dinah and Eddie and Gustavo Toro and Victor and all those guys over there they're really pushing the agenda on, kind of making Brahman better in a lot of ways. And that's something that I think you and I, talk about a lot is, what's the next chapter for us and where can we push these cattle forward? And just seeing everything they do from a data standpoint, I think is pushing us, to fall in line with what the new age of commercial cattlemen are expecting. And congratulations to y'all. Y'all were one of the winners in the feed efficiency test. I just thought that was a great evening of knowledge, of fellowship. They sold some really good cattle in their sale. And man, we need more stuff like that.
Yes. Well, when we drove up there, I really didn't know what to expect. And I'll be honest, I had heard some chatter that maybe the crowds were a little lighter at some of the events, prior to this event. But when we drove up, we had to park nearly a mile away because it was packed. And then we walked up to their tent, and it was standing room only. It was full of international people, which really made me so happy. The international community really came out for that event, and it was fabulous.
I agree. And I think as we look forward at what our customers demand, whether they're US based commercial cattlemen or, foreign clients that are breeding registered Brahman cattle, they're really grasping those concepts from a data standpoint of where these cattle need to be. And ST really spells that out very, very simply and in a way in which everyone can really understand. One of the things that I really enjoyed was those markers that they are now able to test for maturity. That is something that is so important as we shape kind of the next generation of American Brahman, and having them speak to that, I think was huge, especially with that crowd of people.
Yes. So for those that weren't there, maybe I'll just give a quick refresher, but they have a new, and again, I'm not an expert on this, so I don't want to say things wrong, but they have new genetic markers that can detect things like, I know, pigmentation, navel shape and length, slick gene in Brahman, marbling, fertility. So they had like a DNA panel that would tell you, kind of like an ancestry.com, what the breakdown is of your animal, with how much percent Cebu, how much percent Bos Taurus. It's fascinating. It really was blowing my mind.
And Rachel, maybe speak a little bit to what y'all won that evening from a feed efficiency contest standpoint, because I found that to be very interesting as well.
Mm-hmm. So we participated in their special, I think it was called like the World Series or it was something, World Championship. And it was basically a performance test for bulls and females. And we put in maybe 5 or 6 bulls. The bulls we put in were actually ones that we're probably planning to keep back as herd bulls. And so we entered them in the test so that we could get all this data. And the data was just amazing. And so the bulls were evaluated for feed efficiency, carcass quality, sustainability, average daily gain. And one of our bulls topped the category for average daily gain. But, this is something we definitely plan on participating in the future, just to get that data on the bulls that we're going to be marketing to our fellow breeders.
Yeah, for me, that's when a big light bulb kind of went off in my mind of one, be very brutally honest, like we really struggle selling commercial bulls, red Brahman bulls. And I think there's a few things we could talk about from a show ring standpoint that kind of correlates with that. But as we left, I kind of talked, had that same conversation with dad is, these bulls that we don't show that we kind of want to keep back for ourselves to, potentially utilize. I think they heavily need to be a part of that program moving forward, because that's only going to make us better. And that's one way I think that we can have another tool in our toolbox when speaking to a lot of these commercial cattlemen. They'll come for females all day long, but from a red Brahman standpoint, there's a hurdle there to get past for marketing red Brahman bulls in the commercial world.
Yeah. Well, then I guess after that, we just rolled right into the show.
But yeah, I guess Rachel, to start off, kind of give me that recap of, you sent out a really great email blast that kind of highlighted a lot of the BRC cattle that won, but then a lot of the BRC genetics that won. And then we can kind of go from there and kind of maybe talk about some of them and kind of build from there.
We took 28 head, and which was a lot for us. And I mean, of course, for us, the highlight was winning champion female with Margaret. But all in all, we had 9 class winners, I think 3 division winners, 1 reserve. And one of the biggest things we were proud of was our group class competition. So we had champion natural produce with 835 Lupita, which is the mother of 160, so that's probably the one that Brandon is most proud of, because he believes in keeping our donors on a regular calving interval. And so that one was great. The embryo produce we won with Margaret and 240, her brother. Get of sire we won with 160. And then genetic group we won with the progeny from the Sweetie and the Parton bull. And then our customers, we were on the way home, we were just kind of talking that there was a lot of captains that did really well. Of course, there was a lot of other bulls too, but in the Grand Champion Drive for the females, I know the Herzogs had HC Quinn, which is a captain out of one of your cows. And then the Smith family had a reserve division with a captain. And I believe the Harris family had a division champion too with a captain. And when I started studying that, it was cool to me that there was a lot of combinations of BRC and heritage genetics, which I love. And then, of course, there was Quinn with the BRC and Watkins combination. And I like seeing all of us breeders working together with our genetics, I think is the direction we need to go with sharing genetics, collaborating, taking the best from my herd and the best from your herd. And let's just see what we can create.
No, definitely. I think one of the things that I was most excited and also like bragging about just from like evaluating a lot of the classes and the show as a whole over the week. And I said this on another group text that I'm on this morning. And I was like, Wade Harris is doing an incredible job with this BRC heritage combo. And I really walk away from World Brahman Congress excited for them as Brahman breeders. That those animals, I think maybe they had calf champion female and then reserve calf champion bull. Those animals can go the distance. And it's just great to see a small breeder like raise the bar on quality. And I just walked away just being overwhelmed and really excited for them. I think they've done an incredible job.
Yeah, me too. I thought the cattle from the cattle from Heritage were really nice, especially their young cattle. Very impressive. I also really liked 79 cattle. I thought they have a very good solid show string. Of course, we love anything Cheryl Griner. She had a couple too that were really nice. I mean, so those were kind of some of my favorites from the Gray show. And what are you thinking?
So I'm such a traditionalist, and there's animals in the JD Hudgens show string that I didn't know of. I haven't been really paying attention, you know what I mean, to just a lot of the gray cattle in general at some of these shows. And I walked away from that, seeing some younger cattle that are from different divisions there that I really enjoyed. I got to watch the show, majority of the gray show, with Neil, Clay, and Ross, who are all essential family members over at JD Hudgens. And I had the best time. It's so fun to listen to them and hear their perspective. And Ross works on the ranch every single day, and to kind of kind of listen to kind of some of the things that are working for them right now while we're watching the show. It was just a lot of fun. And I'll look back on World Brahman Congress, and that was probably one of the highlights was sitting with those guys and evaluating kind of some of the cattle with them and seeing some of the things that they like, outside of their, half circle L brand was great just to get their perspective and feedback. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, those guys are awesome. I don't know did you see the video that JD Hudgens put out a few days before the Congress?
Yeah, that was so good.
It was good. It was really good, and it made me happy to hear them saying, that how they value moderate framed functional animals. I think, of course, I mean, we know that when we see their cattle, but I think it's good for the breed when we can continue to hear that message being put out by the leaders of the breed.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they register the most amount of cattle every year with the association. They're, have more than 100 years, in terms of breeding these cattle. And I know your family's very integrated, with them as well through your mom's side, Rachel. And I don't know. I think breed character always wins. And I think, fertility always wins in these cattle. Those are the two main reasons why people select Brahman cattle, because they have the distance to live a very long time. And we are a heat tolerant breed. And if we stick to those fundamentals, we'll always be extremely successful. So again, watching the show, yes, I'm always, enjoy seeing the different genetic combinations that you have and Judd and Gayla are producing. But man, looking at the JDH string and finding some of those next kind of leaders potentially within their program, I think was a lot of fun as well.
So I don't know if I'm going to put you on the spot here, but you said fertility and breed character. Overall, how would you rate fertility and breed character at the show? Not, at an individual ranch level or animal level or anything, but just in general. What was your take?
So one of the things that I think is very disappointing for all of us is just the lack of pairs that we see come around that second and third year. And I think that's one of the things we got to work on.
I had 4 pairs at the show.
Yeah, probably 4 of what, maybe the 8 that were there. So you might have had like half of the pairs that were in competition. But you've seen this when we go down to these other countries, Mexico and South. Those age cow classes are huge. You know what I mean? Because they're calving these individuals out at 2.5. And sometimes these animals are coming back at their final shows with their second calf. We've seen that at some of these shows. And then from a fertility standpoint within the bulls, we often see a lot of leaner type bulls that are showing in some of these shows in Central and South America, bulls that have been working, already. And I know that's something that you and Brandon are really pushing forward with kind of y'all's 2-year-old and older bulls is making them work. And I think that's so important. That's so, so very important. So I have 2 big challenges for, I guess, us as breeders on both the red and gray side. It would be great to see more pairs coming back, you know what I mean, to show it and people getting their cattle bred at the right time. I was a big proponent of that rule that required those January, February individuals that were 2.5 to show with calves, in that fall season. I think ABBA implemented the rule, they took it away. And I think sometimes the medicine hurts, but it helps the patient long term. And so I was really sad to see, ABBA take that rule back, because I think that was only going to help us get better. You know what I mean? And kind of push a path forward, on fertility in the show ring. So I hope ABBA really takes that into consideration. You know what I mean? That the rule that was put in place was meant to help the breed from a fertility standpoint, and so that commercial cattlemen can come to our show and see some likenesses. You know what I mean? Because honestly, to pay a lot of bills to get those cattle to calve at 2.5 to 32 months is kind of where we need to kind of fit. You know what I mean? Long term. So we'll see what happens.
Of course, I was happy with the udder quality on my cows, but that was really important that's really important to us. I did see a few that I wish it would have been better udder quality. And I will admit, I did see some bulls that I couldn't see the testicles. I would like to see our breed, all breeders taking a an interest in that and really making that their priority of having cows with great udders. And if they don't have a good udder, maybe you don't need to bring them to the show. And, same for testicular development, scrotal circumference. Like we gotta identify for animal that are good and superior in those areas and push that forward.
We need tons of quality control within the show ring from a Brahman standpoint. And I think one of the best conversations that I had was with a group of cattlemen from Mexico, and they just felt strongly like some of the animals that we are exhibiting here in the US would not make a classification in Mexico or in other countries. And the things you were just talking about, scrotal circumference, some structural integrity, some udder quality, pieces, that's something we're going to have to address as a breed. And I think a lot of it falls into, I was sitting there and I was watching the show and looking at kind of a lot of the sponsors and going through the catalog and looking at a lot of the names of exhibitors. There's a lot of new people. There's a lot of people who haven't bred Brahman cattle long term. And so I think we have this, we're at this time and this crossroads right now where education is so important, of what you show and what you don't show. And what works for, commercial cattlemen also should be at the forefront of what works for a registered operation. I'll be very honest with you. I made a point to watch the entire Red Bull show. I didn't have a W branded Red Bull showing. Out of the entire Red Show, and I made a list in my booklet, there was only 5 bulls in the entire show that I think would work from a commercial standpoint or a registered Brahman standpoint. And everything else are animals that need to be culled. And that's aggressive to say that for a show that of that size, that there's only 5 bulls in there that can work from a baseline standpoint. But there's a lot of hard decisions that need to be made from a red Brahman breeder standpoint. And I can tell you there's a lot of conversations being had amongst top red Brahman breeders of what do we need to do to get this bull thing back on track? Because right now it is not sustainable for the commercial cattleman. It is not sustainable for the registered Brahman producer. And that's my biggest challenge to a lot of the new breeders, established breeders in red Brahman is we've got to get on board with quality control, and we've got to make a big change.
Well, I'm just going to piggyback on that. Your assessment is really actually only based on visual appraisal. You don't know what the birth weights are. You don't know what their carcass data is. So just looking at visual appraisal, when you throw in the data on some of those bulls, it might be even smaller.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. And when you have an international crowd and these bulls are being shown on an international platform, whether it's something like Congress or at Houston, it's so important for us to always put our best foot forward. And we're just over the last few years, we're just not doing that from a red Brahman bull standpoint, and we can improve that.
My great friend Luciana from Brazil was there, and I was so happy that she came because she and I have judged some shows simultaneously around the world together, and I really love her and she's very sharp. But the first thing she asked me was, y'all don't provide any data on these cattle? Like, she was looking at the program and she was, expecting to see some weights or, scrotal circumference measurements or anything. And, sadly, my answer was no. We don't provide any data.
And that's what, you can say what you want about the weights and measures program and how that was handled. About a year ago, I was tasked with chairing a subcommittee on weights and measures. And I could write a book about some of the issues that we have with the show committee and reality, and how weights and measures also fits into that process. One of the best individuals that I don't know him, but I got to work with him on that, was Gary Buchholz. And he said, this is a breed association that gives no direction to what they want for frame score. And that's the only breed association I've ever been a part of that's not actively being proactive, on setting kind of the tone for that. And that's a problem. You know what I mean? That's a huge, huge, huge problem that we have. I'd like to see weights and measures come back, but I'd like to see it come back in a way in which it benefits us all, from a data collection standpoint.
Well, we could go a couple of paths right here. Like, I don't know if you want to go down the path of weights and measures slash overaging. I don't know if you want.
No, I think it all comes into setting quality control for the breed. And I'm a firm believer, and I think you would echo these sentiments that if we're going to get cattle on the scales and weigh and measure them, we ought to mouth them. We ought to get scrotal circumference. We ought to have a team of, maybe veterinarians that we collaborate with from an association standpoint that say, you know what, this animal from a structure standpoint has so many great deficiencies from a hoof structure, we're not going to allow them to show. And that's okay. That's okay because I think we all rise up in those types of situations. And then we set a standard for what the breed is not going to accept from a show ring standpoint.
Well, it kind of goes back to some of the new breeder education because we had a situation this fall. It wasn't at the World Congress, but there was a breeder who was showing a Grollia calf, and he did not know what that was. And he went to a show, and the judge identified him as that and, placed him last and actually said, technically you shouldn't even be registered. But the new person, he just didn't know what it was, so it's not being ugly or it's not being mean to people. It's really just helping people understand the breed standards.
And it's also so important for the association to be a part of that conversation. You know what I mean, with breeders on a active standpoint in the show arena. And I think that's seeing ABBA become more involved in any way possible. I'm an advocate for, and that's what I would hope. For our organization as it relates to the show ring. Again, if we're going to get these cattle on scales, I think there's a lot of different data points that would just help all of us and help the association.
If there's anyone who understands the need for branding, it's a cattle rancher. For 25 years, Ranch House Designs have been crafting custom logos for ranches just like yours around the country. And there's nothing more important than the right logo for building your brand. A logo is the handshake your ranch needs to capture the attention of potential clients and customers. So, turn to Ranch House Designs to make the solid first impression your ranch deserves. Let's get branding your ranch today. Go online to ranchhousedesigns.com.
I got to interject a funny story because you were talking about frame score and the direction of our breed. And I tend to like on the upper end of moderate. I'm just going to be honest. And I was sitting with an international breeder and we had this conversation and Brandon tends to be on, the lower end of moderate. And so I asked the international breeder, what is their preference? And he immediately was like, oh, at least a minimum size 8. I was like, thank you. Yes. But I know that's too big, but
yeah, Brahman are a performance breed from a frame standpoint. And I think what's so great is you can find different genetic lines in just the BRC program. You know what I mean? That if you want to frame score up, there's the ability to do that. But with that being said, there's a difference between frame score and maturity in some of these animals, and I think the overaging issue that we have right now, it's a problem. And it's not just people moving and shifting stuff a few weeks. I think it's substantial. And you see that in the maturity level of these individuals. And so I'm all for mouthing some of these cattle. I think that's a great way to pinpoint and determine, if you've got an animal in the calf division that's missing a tooth, you've got problems, quite frankly. So, and again, if we're going to get cattle on a scale at any point in time, there's a lot of other great things that we can capture, from a data standpoint, not just their weight, not just their hip height. And also, I think everything we look at has to go back to kind of the standard of excellence. Like, I'm really a big proponent and an advocate of kind of what our forefathers kind of set out for us. And it's outlined very clearly, on what they thought the direction, should be, from a mature cow weight and a mature bull weight. And I think if we, continue to tweak that and advance that, the playbook is there for us. I think we have just gotten really so far from that.
Away from it. Yeah.
But, again, I think what makes me so excited about seeing the Congress show is, one, I think there was some real world cattle that really rose to the top. I think there's some newer breeders that, like I mentioned, they're not new per se, but the Harris family, breeding some great gray Brahman cattle, that are a smaller operation, but just really focusing on quality. Also, we saw kind of a smaller class size in both the gray and the red show, and it kind of made me think back to when I was growing up. And you go to Houston, and the show lasted for a few hours, maybe a half a day, and then it was over. And I think there's something to be said about increasing quality and pulling back on numbers. I don't know if we increase quality by great amounts, but seeing a more manageable type show was really enjoyable. And I have to hand it to Dr. Fontenot. I think Dr. Craig did such a great job on keeping a good pace. It was very easy to watch. You know what I mean? It wasn't these long drawn out sagas of, selection making. And that was enjoyable. The pace was very nice to see that.
I agree. I had just written down the pace of the judging because it was great. It was very refreshing. It kept everybody's attention and everyone stayed interested. They stayed interested in the show.
Yeah, and I think that's something for maybe the association to take away is, these classes of 15 head or approximately 15 head are very ideal. And really, there wasn't many classes over 15. You had a couple get to 20, I think. Even so, that's very manageable. We've got to put an end to these 40, 30 plus classes that we're seeing in Houston. That is not enjoyable for the person that is evaluating the cattle. That is not fun for the showman, and that is not fun for the spectator. And quite honestly, it looks like a train wreck. And so I think they need to be capped at every 15, and we just kind of move forward from that. And if it means we got more winners in a division lineup, so be it. But I think the show is so much more enjoyable for everyone involved. Why the show committee has not gotten on board with that concept yet is beyond me, because every large established breed associations that are having these very intense larger shows have really adopted those type of policies.
Well, the thing we can also say about this show is I can confidently say every calf got a look, and they got a solid look. They got a chance to walk freely at their own pace, to set up, to have adequate spacing. I don't think anybody can complain, well, the judge never even saw my calf, because he looked at every calf.
I agree.
I think and that's very positive, especially, when it takes a lot of time and money to get here, and that's important.
Oh, it's so important. Rachel, one of the things that I also was very keen on, and I wrote down in my booklet, I was really curious about a lot of the calves that you had at side on many of the cattle that you were showing. And so maybe tell me a little bit about what some of those calves are and maybe what you see as their future, because that was really exciting to see, some really interesting calves at side on many of your show cattle.
I would love to talk about this. So I think most, if not every single one of the calves at side of ours were sired by a bull we recently bought from Mark Ferguson, JDH Verano Manso 292, and he's a Maasai son. And we purposely selected that bull to breed to the cattle, the females in our show string, because he's a very moderate framed bull. So when we're naturally breeding, not to get too technical, but when we're naturally breeding those show heifers, we wanted a bull that was not going to injure anybody, not going to be too rough on, any of the calves, the heifers. And so we picked a moderate framed, really straight top, low birth weight, just excellent breed character Maasai son. And so that he would be the sire of Margaret's calf at side. He would also be the sire of BRC Melvin, who was the calf at side of Winona, and the calf who was calf champion bull.
And so are the calves at side of Margaret, and then the big white cow that I love so much that had a calf at side. I forget what she is.
242. Yes, I believe.
242, yeah.
Don't quote me. It's either that or she might be AI'd by the Parton bull, because we AI, and then we clean up with the Hudgens bull. So I can't remember exactly on her. And then 250 was one of a pair we had that actually we brought up out of the pasture because she just looked, had a perfect udder, had a great calf. And so I think that one might be a different sire, but.
Oh, nice. I I noticed her. I starred next to her name, Perfect Udder. She's got a little bit of a red tinge across her top line. That yeah, the udder quality on that female is exceptional.
Yes. Well, what else? What else are our observations?
Question. I want for you to talk a little bit about. There's a young calf on your show string, BRC Ashley Grant, and that female I think is so special for many ways, and I think that's one of your up and coming kind of rock stars in the group.
I'm really glad that you noticed her because so she's named after Ashley Grant, who was one of my coworkers at Ranch House for several years and one of my just absolute best friends in life. And I know a friend of yours too. She worked at LSU, and then Ashley was tragically killed in a car wreck earlier this year. And I asked Brandon if he thought it would be okay if we named our best young heifer in honor of Ashley. I didn't want it to be weird, but also, naming, I mean, our cows are our beloved to us. And I just was looking for a way to commemorate her memory. And so we named her Ashley Grant. And then we weren't sure we were going to have enough time to get her halter broken up to the show, but she broke in 3 days and Harley loaded her on the trailer. She's a 160 out of 775. So 775 would be the mother of 805 who won in the year it was at Waco.
So 775 still alive. I didn't realize that. That's awesome. Okay, very cool. Okay.
I mean, she's got an amazing pedigree and she is stout. I love that little heifer. And so I'm excited to watch her.
Very cool. So in that calf, you get 160, and then you get kind of the Power Stroke line in some way, shape, or form from your grandfather's ranch, which is that's pretty neat collab there. That's awesome.
Yes. Yes. I love it.
Well, I think she's got such a future in front of her, and I've had a star by her as being one to I can't wait to follow, in the next years to come.
Thank you. Yeah.
So what's next for BRC in terms of like what shows will y'all go to moving forward? I mean, I think we're all have kind of a Brahman hangover after last week, but is there anything that you'll take cattle to before you go to Houston, or what does that look like?
Probably just Houston. What about y'all?
That's kind of what we're thinking. We'll probably try to get our show string kind of back in line for Houston and kind of showcase there. And I've heard of a lot of foreigners that will be coming to Houston, so that's exciting. I know, nobody from Columbia was able to come because their national show is quickly approaching, and there was just no way, for a lot of those breeders. So I always enjoy when a lot of those breeders are able to come, and look at our red cattle because reds are so popular there right now. So Houston for us is still the Super Bowl, of showcasing cattle.
Mm-hmm. Got a couple of wrap up, just quick fire questions.
Yeah, definitely.
What did you think of the DJ at the World Brahman Congress?
The DJ, it's a bit intense. I'm not gonna lie. Especially like when you were going in for those division lineups, it was like really loud, and I felt myself just being a bit agitated as a showman, but also as a spectator. It was a lot.
I like music. I liked it. I did get a little bit tired of the same song playing over and over again, like on the division drives. But Molly loved it. She said it was pumping her up. And at one point, I think they were playing like "Take on Me" from the 80s, and I was like singing in the makeup arena. I loved that.
They had some great 80s songs like mixed in that playlist. I will say this, I really enjoyed it as the classes were going on, just because there's so much kind of that monotonous kind of time to fill. So I thought that was clever. That was really, really good. That was a good idea.
Yeah, I liked that. I don't want to step on anybody's toes here or hurt anybody's feelings, but the duplicated efforts between having to take your picture at the backdrop and then having to take a separate picture for the Brahman Journal, it was a little challenging, I would say. I wish that there would have been a way that everybody could have worked together in that regard. I do think it was a big miss not having the Brahman Journal being able to be a bigger part of it.
That was I'm all for trying something new and trying to make things better. I'll be flat out honest. That was probably the biggest miss of the week is not having the Brahman Journal as an integral partner in showcasing Brahman genetics to the world. And I just think that there's a lot of content that wasn't captured because of that. I think their ability and their the equipment and everything that they have to do the live broadcast is kind of what is now expected, within the breed. And I hope there's a way that, you know, ABBA and the Brahman Journal can work together in the future on these shows where we desperately need to showcase, to the greater world and greater community. That was just a miss. It was a flat out miss.
Yeah. And I will say, I love Next Level Images. Their photos are fabulous. I thought the backdrop was absolutely beautiful. The colors, the greenery, I loved it. I was as always, I'm very happy with the photos we get from Next Level because they just do a great job.
I agree, and that's what I love so much about Houston is, you have Next Level as a photographer, and then the Brahman Journal is, showcasing the show through the live feed. It's kind of like the best of both worlds. And I think that's what kind of like that's the bar that's been set. That's what we expect. And I think the membership, moving forward is going to demand that. So, I hope ABBA leadership, kind of sees that was, one without the other doesn't really work. And, there's a way in which everybody can kind of, get on the same team hand in hand.
Yeah. Where did you eat dinner this week at the show?
Oh, like Adeline took me to a place okay, we'll go down this path because this is hilarious. Adeline took me to a place to go out to dinner the night that we won. I think it's called Porter's. So Adeline Allen, one of my best friends, she works for ST Genetics. She grew up in College Station. So we went to Porter's for dinner. It was just the two of us, which was nice because after, kind of being in the mix of everything for so long, it was nice to have that kind of quiet time with each other. And then Chad Oates, who works for Next Level, he happened to be staying at the hotel next door. And so he joined us. And that was really fun to recap with someone who was like actively like shooting the show from a photography standpoint all week. And, getting his feedback as someone who's not a Brahman breeder and seeing the cattle. But while we were having dinner is when that Skinny Brahman newsletter thing ended up in both of our WhatsApps. And at first I thought it was like, I didn't know what to think of it because it was kind of blurry. You know what I mean? So I was like having kind of a hard time like reading it. But it was a kind of a funny way to end the night and kind of dissect that. And, it's completely random. And so, yeah, that was interesting.
You must rank higher than me in the Brahmin caste system, so to speak, because I didn't get it till Saturday morning.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's I love a good satire account. Like I follow the Babylon Bee, which is kind of like a right-wing satire Instagram account. And so I've been trying to kind of figure out some of the different play on words. And who is the ABC crew?
I don't know. I've asked that.
I've been trying to like uncover that for the last like 2 or 3 days because you can kind of figure out who some of the other play on words are
Right.
throughout the article, but the ABC crew, I'm completely stumped.
Is that everybody? I mean, because really, like every single. I mean, we have BRC, you have WCC.
Maybe it's every single prefix kind of.
Every single person has a prefix. I don't know.
That's interesting. Yeah, that could maybe be it.
I really don't know. If you read every line of that and there's like a hidden message in every line. I'm sitting here trying to figure it all out.
And one of the things that you and I have kind of laughed about and have discussed is, I use ChatGPT a lot for real estate listings. That is, instead of outsourcing that line of work now, my assistant and my business partner, we just use ChatGPT. That is something that you cannot plug into ChatGPT because the play on words and those specific examples, like you would just get like a complete hodgepodge of information if you were to try to do that within an AI app. So someone took a lot of time to sit down and crank all of that out and then put it into some type of, PDF with visuals man.
Well, see, I don't watch TV, and I did not know what this Bridgerton thing even is or was. Do you? Do you watch that show?
So yes, I've seen Bridgerton both seasons 1 and season 2. Again, I love a good satire like account, and Bridgerton's kind of like that, but more. I mean, it's more like TV drama, I guess you could say.
Okay. Well, so that's what someone was telling me, that it's kind of based off of this TV show, which I don't even, now I realize I'm like the not cool person who doesn't know TV show stuff. But I will tell you this Chat GPT. So I got that, when I got it, I uploaded it into Chat GPT and I said, write a response to this in a Bridgerton style format just to see like what it would come up with.
Yeah. Oh my God, I can't imagine.
It was, I mean, I should share it. Was just like it was kind of what you would expect from Chat GPT, but it goes back to your point. Whoever wrote that, they know stuff that I don't even know. And I consider myself pretty in the trenches of, the barn or knowing certain animals and stuff. And there was stuff in that letter that I didn't even know they were talking about. So,
And for me, when I read it, like there's some things that, yes, it's fun to poke fun at each of us as breeders and kind of in this space and have jokes amongst ourselves. For me, what I hope they steer clear of moving forward is there were a few kind of zings towards the staff or how long Paul would stay in the role. And Paul is one of my dear friends. I know he's a very close friend of yours, and I'm rooting for him in this role. And I don't want to see anything like this making their jobs harder. You know what I mean? For him, for Edie, for Kylie, for anybody who is on staff at ABBA. And so if you are Brahmin Skinny or Skinny Brahmin, whatever this thing is called, and you're listening, try to steer the narrative away from actual staff members. And it's okay to poke fun at whoever, but that needs to be kind of off limits.
I agree. But I will admit, if someone wanted to call me the Skinny Brahmin at this point in my life, I would take it.
Well, I've gotten so many texts being like, are you the Skinny Brahmin? Are you and Rachel the Skinny Brahmin? Are you and Adeline and Rachel the Skinny Brahmin? And I'm like, one, that is such a compliment. I wish I could write more satire type features. I love following, again, like the Babylon Bee. I don't have that gift.
Yeah. No, I was referencing the 40 pounds I would like to lose.
Oh my God. That's hilarious.
Yeah. I do think I think it could be a group of people, because I just keep thinking, who is one single person who could be this creative?
There's no way. There's no way. And so, I think it's funny how we're ending on this note. But yes, I guess part of the World Brahman Congress recap is on the final day, we all get hit with this letter, which was very entertaining to read. It's like you said, I think there's no way that one person has this wheelhouse of all this information, because of what was included.
Yeah. Well, have we missed anything else?
No, I mean, I think it was a small show. I think there's some pros and cons to that, and it's part of Brahmin history. And so, for a long time, we weren't really sure. I really wanted this show to be at Houston, and I kind of moved past that. And I'm glad that we exhibited our two head that we had for the show, and just to be a part of Brahmin history. It's something that I think we can all appreciate and take a step back from, and find the fun and the value in that.
I agree. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to Houston.
Me too.
As always, looking forward to Houston. And
it's fun to see the cattle that they're going to change so much. We're basically 5+ months out from Houston right now, and it's we don't go to the show every time to see the same exact cattle win. So to see the maturity level of these younger ones kind of grow up and kind of see, some of these animals will knock off because they'll overage out. It's always fun from one season to the next to kind of see where cattle are.
Well, Stuart, it's been great. It's been an hour.
Yeah, I know. We covered a lot.
It's been great catching up with you and hearing just our rehash debriefing.
Absolutely. I always look forward to kind of getting, I feel like both of our programs and with the international presence we have, hearing each other's feedback and bouncing ideas around is always fun and positive. And I look forward to the next show. And are you judging any international shows coming up? Do you have anything on the list? I do not right now. I kind of would like to take a break for a few months. I feel like I've kind of been, full throttle. And I'm just kind of ready for the holidays and looking at all of our spring barns. We just weaned all of them. So that's kind of my focus right now.
Yeah, awesome. Well, it was great catching up. Hope you have a wonderful day. And thank you all, everyone, for listening to Over the Hump.
You've been listening to the Over the Hump Podcast. Our passion is Brahman cattle, and it runs deep. And this show is about its rich history, industry trends, and stories that define the American Brahman. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on Instagram and Facebook at BR Cutrer. See you next time on the Over the Hump Podcast.